I'm not sure if you, as we were paying attention to the readings, I think there's a little bit, I know something that in my studies when I was doing it that caught our attention when you talk about the book of Proverbs, which is in the part of the Bible for wisdom literature, and that's the literature that helps or was given to Israelites to help them understand their day-to-dayness, what's going on, how deep is their covenant with the Lord. That in that particular set of readings, at least what we heard today, guys, I'm sorry to tell you, she's feminine. Women hold the wisdom according to this book in the Bible. And it made me think about all the women in my life, especially my mom, who tried to teach me stuff going forward, and how sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't. And I'm not saying then that we're not wise, but there is just a wisdom about that in part of women who are mothers and aunts and and all that stuff going on. And today we have wisdom saying that she's preparing a banquet for her people. She's inviting people over to eat, and that's usually what happens. Going through. I could remember sitting with my mom at tables and stuff and having discussions, and I knew I was getting close to getting punished when my mother got that look in her eye. You're crossing the line, son. I don't want to do this, but this is going to be something important. You better pay attention. And if we're thinking the whole thing of the meal, today in this Sunday's gospel, we're in the second part of John's gospel of the Eucharistic narrative, where John is trying to get his people to understand the profound sacrifice of the Lord in a way that is hard to understand. And for us as Catholics, it has come out that we believe that during the Eucharist, when the words of consecration are said, the host and the wine are not symbols. They're not representations of Jesus, but they're actually his body and his blood. As we are here breathing and talking to one another, going through, that what's called real presence is in those elements. And that is why it's important, or that is why we come together every week to be nourished by that body and blood, by that flesh and blood. And another little interesting commentary that I read on this week's gospel is an interesting when he says that his body is food and drink, that the people understood that at different levels. Yeah, they had that initial shock. How is he going to give us this stuff to eat? And we know that it developed and it grew. But it was Jesus talking about how he was the incarnation of the God who created us, was his incarnation to renew us again, to renew the covenant that he made, that from, if we remember our Genesis books, that from Adam and Eve was broken, that he said he would send his son, he would send a Savior, he would become one of us in order to show us what it meant to live in a different way. So part of that flesh and the blood is our understanding of Jesus being that real image in the world of a God who created us and loved us so much that he suffered and died for us on the cross. And that led me to reflect a little bit about how coming the masses, and I know more than once I've used this example, but it's always one of my favorites. I read an article one time about what should we get out of coming to Mass. Think about it, because you all come. What do we expect the Lord to do to us because we're here every week? And this article was talking about how if we have a mentality that is more cash and carry, for lack of a better term, for more of a cash and carry, that, Lord, I'm coming here, so because I'm here, I'm going to ask you to do something. I've come here, so you need to do it. And this article begins to reflect on our position as creatures, as people who have been created by a loving God, and what our God expects for us is to return him something for our creation, to be in contact with him through this sacrament. Now, I'm of the age group, and when I was also thinking a little bit about the sacraments as they went forward, is that I was brought up that a sacrament is an outward sign instituted by God to give grace. I said a lot of the older people would know that, going through that. And that's what we say, the sacrament of the Eucharist. So the coast is the outward sign that God instituted the Last Supper, that when we come to Mass, we're somehow changed and we're given a little bit of like an energy boost, for lack of a better term, to live through the week. During my studies, and we did a lot of things on sacraments, one of the things that really had me think was, and it's not negating sacraments, it's when we come together for whatever sacrament, be it baptism or confirmation or for marriage or for holy orders or the united of the sick or for reconciliation, we are really in a moment of profound encounter with God. Because that's at the core of the sacrament. That in some way we have a connection, a depth with the God who created us. And if we use that or think about that for our attendance at the Eucharist, it's not that we come here and we get something, which we should, we get time, but the Lord is asking us to return to Him something that I would think every one of us doesn't have enough of. Time. Because it takes time to come to Mass. You got to get up, you got to get ready, you got to feed your kids, you got to get dressed, you got to put clothes on, you got to travel, depends on how far you are away from it. You come in the church, and then what happens is, oh no. When you look at the chalices, because I'm sure all of you know whose chalices belongs to what priest. Oh no. His chalice is out there, he's going to speak forever. Oh no, or not very good. I mean, oh no, can you look at that person? They're not controlling their kid. I mean, we have all these distractions when we come in to the Eucharist, is that sometimes our distractions take us away. And what the Lord wants us to do is come and say, Lord, I'm here. I want to give you my time. And what I expect, or what I ask you to do, that through this encounter during this moment, you allow me to experience you during this week. That in some way, as I live through my week, you'll kind of break into my life because I've taken the time to settle with you on this Sunday. And as I live my week and go through my job, be with my family, work through things, if I study or shop or whatever it is, that there is some really important way that I begin to experience more your presence, that I begin to encounter you more in my life, because we are connected through our baptism. So today, as we reflect on what it means to have a wisdom around the table, because that's what Proverbs asks us, that we sit around our table and we learn from the meals that we have had. When we come around the table of the Lord, how is it that we encounter a Lord that feeds us today, but walks with us every day of our lives?